Welcome, everyone, to the Virginia Beach Public Library Meet the Artist presentation with Maggie Kerrigan. I'm your host, Sandy Hopkins, librarian for programming and community outreach with the Virginia Beach Public Library. And also our host tonight is Robert Kennedy, volunteer art gallery coordinator.
Thanks, Sandy, and welcome to all. We're glad that you've joined us. We are pleased to welcome artist Maggie Kerrigan. Maggie is widely known as the book artist. She rescues old and unwanted books by deconstructing and reconstructing them into sculptural pieces. Maggie received her bachelor's at the University of Virginia and her master's at Oklahoma University. While neither were in the fine arts, for the past 30 years, she has taken many art classes through museums, adult education, and week-long immersive programs at Arrowmont and Penland Arts and Crafts Schools. Maggie's art is exhibited locally and regionally and has been in several national and invitational shows. The recipient of many awards, Maggie is proudest of her Merit Award from the Art Fields competition in South Carolina. Welcome, Maggie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Robert and Sandy. I appreciate it very much. Going to get my video on. It's always fun. Yes, thank you so much. I'm truly honored to have an opportunity to show my work at the Central Library in the gallery there. It's been a challenge and a goal of mine for quite a while. So I'm really pleased to be here. As Robert said, I am the book artist and I rescue unwanted books. Sorry about that. By turning them into sculptural pieces, by folding, cutting, deconstructing, reconstructing, just a big variety of techniques. And I'm often asked, how did you get started with this? And the answer to that is that I was introduced virtually to an artist in Scotland who creates artworks out of books. And I had never really considered books to be a substrate for art, but being a former teacher, I had an attic full of them. So I decided to pull a few out and do some experimenting with them. These are the first two books that I ever created. The first one was a children's book about the moon. And so I created a spaceship heading toward the moon. And that's all with paper from the book, plus a little piece of wire. And then the second one there on the right is the first book I ever cut up to try to create an image out of the front of the book. And that was a German dictionary. I've simply fallen in love with books. It was really the way I found my artistic voice. Even after years and years of painting with watercolor and acrylic, the altered books are the way that I really can express myself. And one of the things that's unique and sets me apart from other artists is that the books always relate to the artwork. For example, this piece called White Shark is actually a book called White Shark by Peter Benchley. And you all might recognize his name. He's the author who wrote Jaws. So this was another book of his that I created this shark out of. One thing I love about altered books is the variety of techniques. For example, this book was called Unraveled. So I took all the pages apart, glued them end to end, twisted them into yarn, and then knitted all the book pages, this long piece of yarn, into this piece of knitting here. And then unfortunately that used all of the paper that was in that single book. So I went and found a couple self-help books that I could use to make the knitting needles and the extra yarn that can knit the whole thing back together. Most of what I'm going to have hanging at the library is two-dimensional that can hang on the wall, but in reality, most of the art that I do is three-dimensional. So I'm going to be showing you a lot of these pieces today, and hopefully you're going to get over to the library and see the other books or the other artworks that are on display there. One of the techniques I use is cutting the books by hand. So I use a simple pair of scissors And I work page by page through the book, cutting into the front edge of the paper until I have either words or images or symbols that appear. For example, this is a set of World Book encyclopedias, and I've been, because encyclopedias, dictionaries, things like that are what I consider endangered species, I've been doing endangered concepts or endangered animals as part of this series. And my goal is to work through the entire series, the entire set of encyclopedias. I have 6 to go. One day I'd like to get a hardcover thesaurus so I can make a dinosaurus. So I like to have a lot of fun with these, and that's what I think is great about altering books, is that you can be really creative. This is another hand-cut book. The book is War and Peace, and the title of this artwork is Choose Peace. Again, it's done by hand, one page at a time. Sometimes I also cut through the cover of the book and then carve the pages going down into the book. So on the left, you'll see a book that was cut with an X-Acto knife that's entitled Mother Earth. And then on the right, another book that then I wove some embroidery floss around. And in this example on the left, I cut a hole in the cover and then cut the pages in a pie shape and then pushed all the pages through to make that flower. And that book is called An Introduction to Painting Flowers. So I thought that was kind of fun. My most popular books, though, I would say are probably the folded books. And when I work on these books, I make cuts into the edge of the paper and then I fold the edge of the paper in at varying distances to create three-dimensional images that seem to be just popping out of the front of the book. I actually teach this technique. These are 2 books that were made at a 40th birthday party not long ago. So these are made by the people that were at the birthday party. They did a great job. I teach how to make this heart book, but it kind of shows you the magic secret to how to make the book art. So keep that in mind. I've taught the heart book to Girl Scout troops and all kinds of people. So it's always a lot of fun to do that. So here are a couple more examples of folded books. The one on the left was a commission. The woman's husband the friends all joke that he's a spy. So it's called, the book is called 003.5, which is the nickname they have for him. So that was really fun. And then on the right is a forgery that I did of a Picasso for an exhibition that's called Fabulous Forgeries. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of variety. Here's an example of making one of these folded books. It's a time lapse just to show you kind of how that process goes. This was a commission for a graduating high school senior, and she was on the track team. So the book that I used for it was a book about running, about the love of running. And then it was, of course, her team mascot or school mascot, the school name, and the year she graduated. So again, it's just folding the edges of the paper page by page, and you can see how that eventually builds the picture of the book. Oops, how do I keep going? Another technique I like to use is called paper casting. With paper casting, I coat an object with the paper and then I remove the object out of the paper so that the actual artwork is very lightweight. So on the left is a typewriter. I actually used a real manual typewriter, and I did it in a few different stages to create this one. And that's created out of a book by Tom Wolfe, who's an author he died recently in 2019, but he continued to always write his books on a manual typewriter. He never switched over to a computer like most authors have. And then on the right, I did this one by making a silicone cast first of my son's face, and then I layered paper into the silicone cast to create the paper cast of his face. And kind of ironically, that's a book by Tom Wolfe as well called A Man in Full. I was having a lot of fun with the idea of casting heavy objects, so I chose a book that I thought epitomed heavy reading, which is War and Peace, and then I cast this set of dumbbells out of it. I actually did 12 dumbbells, the whole set that we had at our house. And as you can see, the family that bought these have been having quite a lot of fun with them. I think it's been a lot of fun too. I work with a lot of other techniques as well. So on the left is the book Water for Elephants. And I took passages out of the book and then wove them into this image of the elephant. And then on the right, this is an example of an installation that I've done where I took the pages and glued them end to end and then punched them with holes. So this book has been punched with about 60,000 holes. And then this is installed as a hanging piece. Has quite a bit of impact. The story behind it, the book was called This Tender Land, and the story behind it is on a blog on my website, if anyone is ever curious to know more about that. Oops. Okay, so I will say that most of the pieces that I sell, I do on commission. So I like the tagline, if you can dream it, I can make it. There's so much possibility with every kind of book or topic or idea. So on the left here is a teacher of the year, and her aunt had me make this book for her using a book, one of her favorite books. So she had won teacher of the year that year, and her aunt gave that to her as a gift. And then the piece on the left is actually a light fixture that hangs from the ceiling. And I took this fish apart. It had wooden scales, took it apart, covered it in book paper from Jacques Cousteau books, and then reassembled it. So this is lovingly called the flying fish and is hanging in an apartment up on the near Chicks Beach, up in that part of town. So another question I do get is, how do you get your ideas? And I will say sometimes the idea itself comes first. I know what I want to make, and I need to go find a book that will fit that idea. So for example, there was an exhibition at the Virginia Beach Art Center called Reflections. So I knew I wanted to carve the word reflections, and then I just had to find a book that would be appropriate. So I went to the thrift store and I found a presidential memoir, which I thought was very appropriate. So that's what I used for that book. But while I was there looking for the book, I also saw this book that was called Oxygen. And I had to pull that off the shelf because I knew that that would have something, some kind of really good idea would come to go with the book Oxygen. So I ended up with that one cutting Just Breathe into the front of it, but then also on the sides, it said breathe in on one side and breathe out on the other. So it's fun to, start with the idea. Sometimes I start with the book. Sometimes I have a book for a long time and can't even figure out what idea is going to work with it until I've talked to people and tossed around a lot of potential possibilities. So I always tell people that, I love puzzles and problems. I love jigsaws and Sudoku. And to me, every book is a puzzle or a problem to figure out what I can do with it. So in this example too, I've been working on finding more ways to create 2D art so that I'll have pieces to put in the show here in the library. So I truly hope you enjoy seeing the show at the library. If you want to see more, come visit me in my studio. I'm here almost every single Tuesday and in and out other days and on weekends. I'm at the Virginia Beach Art Center, which is on Virginia Beach Boulevard, effectively 17th Street, down at the ocean front. So please come in and visit. I'm happy to share ideas. I love to talk to people about what I do and how and why. And I just love hearing from people. So feel free to shoot me an email if you like. Follow me on Facebook or follow me on Instagram. And I just really appreciate having this opportunity with the library.
Thanks, Maggie. That was really well done. And it's just incredible how creative you are. And I really appreciate you explaining about the ideas and the connection, how you connect those with the art. That was really very helpful and also inspiring to us as well. And if you could talk a little bit more about how you choose particular techniques or methods for each of your projects.
That's a good question, Robert. Thank you. The techniques that I choose end up varying from project to project, and a lot of times it just has to do with what book it is that I'm choosing to work with. So I do try to work a different technique on a regular basis. So I'm not only cutting books all the time or only folding books. I try to make sure that maybe every third or fourth project that I get outside of the cover of the book and do something that's maybe more installation based. But sometimes it's really just the book itself that lends itself to a particular technique.
Okay. Uh, And also, I'm sure that takes a lot of intricate design and many, many hours to do these different projects. You mentioned a couple of tools you mentioned knitting. So you literally knitted, and then of course scissors. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the tools that you use.
Sure. Yes. For the cut books, such as this one behind me, the encyclopedias, I do use just an ordinary pair of kitchen scissors. They're from my kitchen block from many years ago.
Right.
They're just high quality German scissors and they work fantastic. They're my favorite pair. I don't let them out of my sight. And then besides that, I'll use just a variety. I have 5 or 6 different varieties of, cutting tools, just X-Acto knife or this utility blade. I have a heavier duty utility blades for when I'm trying to cut through the cover. I experiment with different things. I've used drills. I have a hand drill that I can also use that's not powered. I've used a Dremel before. I've used a rivet gun. It's just really fun to experiment with different tools and the things that they can do and what I can figure out from a book. It's always a puzzle, what can I figure out?
That is great. And again, it shows your creativity, your inquisitive mind, and your ability to solve the problem, as it were. So you mentioned near the beginning, I believe, the Scottish artist who had inspired you. I was wondering if there are other artists doing similar or broadly similar work, or artists of other genre that inspire you.
So I'll talk back about the Scottish artist for just a moment because I would love to give her name. However, she has only revealed that she's a she,
Oh.
and she has chosen to remain anonymous as an artist. So I can't give credit to her completely because I've never found out who she is. But she really was the first inspiration for me. And she's what really got me going. But there are other artists as well. There's another artist named Isaac Salazar, and I actually saw his work featured in Reader's Digest magazine. And I pulled that page out and said to myself, I'm going to try to figure out how to do something like this. So that was what the inspiration was for learning how to fold the books. But I really have been self-taught with that. It's been a process, a trial and error process over the course of many years. And then there are several other artists who work with books. Brian Dedimer is another really incredible artist. I've been inspired by him. He had a show at the Virginia MoCA I don't know, maybe 7 years ago. And his pieces are truly amazing. He uses the X-Acto knife and he carves through all the pages. And he came and did a presentation at MoCA that I was lucky enough to be able to sit in on. And he actually said he has a large, I think it's probably like this big square cube of plastic, and he puts all of his X-Acto blades in it when the blades get dull. So he's got this huge collection
Right.
of blades that he's used. I have a little small collection.
Well, you have been very successful and really advanced the art form. It's very, very impressive. And you also teach, I believe. Is that correct? You
I do.
okay.
I have taught watercolor classes up until recently, but I also do teach the book folding method to make that book the heart book.
Well, great. Well, again, Maggie, we're very impressed by your artwork, and we can't wait to see the secrets that you're working on now for the Central Library Art Gallery. So we hope everyone will join us for Maggie's reception, which will be Wednesday evening, June the 7th, 2023, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And again, this is at Central Library in Virginia Beach. There's plenty of free parking, and it'll be a great chance for you to meet Maggie, see her fantastic work, and to have a great time. Again, thanks very much to Maggie and to all of you. And we'll be back again next month with another Meet the Artist show.
Thank you so much.